In the early winter of 1917, as snow fell across the vast streets of Petrograd, Russia stood on the edge of a moment that would reshape the world. Empires across Europe were trembling from war. But inside Russia, a different storm brewed, one of revolution, hope, fear, and the promise of a new beginning. Out of these flames emerged a state unlike any before, the Soviet Union, a nation built on the bold idea that society could be rebuilt from the ground up. The story begins with the final days of the Russian Empire. Centuries of monarchy and inequality had left millions struggling. Factories were crowded, peasants were hungry, and soldiers fought in a war they no longer believed in. When the old imperial government collapsed, a new wave of political forces stepped into the vacuum. The Bolsheviks, led by a determined and ideological Vladimir Lenin, called for peace, land, and bread. Their message spread quickly among workers, peasants, and soldiers desperate for change. By late 1917, the Bolsheviks seized power and began crafting a new world. They abolished private land ownership, nationalized industries, and declared that all citizens were equal. But the birth of the new state was immediately challenged. A civil war erupted. The Red Army against the White forces, foreign invaders, and internal rebels. The land burned with violence as towns were fought over and families divided. Yet through sheer organization, discipline, and unified leadership, the Red Army survived. When victory finally arrived, it came with the creation of a new country in 1922, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, the USSR. Under Lenin, the USSR began rebuilding, though slowly and painfully. But after his death in 1924, the future of the young nation took a dramatic shift under Joseph Stalin. The Soviet Union entered a period of intense industrialization. Huge steel factories, dams, and railroads rose across the snowy landscapes. Lenin's modest economic ideas were replaced with rapid modernization designed to transform the USSR into an industrial giant. Millions were mobilized to work, and the nation changed at a breathtaking pace. But the cost was immense. The push for collectivization, merging individual farms into state-run collectives, brought resistance, suffering, and famine. The government tightened its control, silencing dissent through fear and strict political rule. The USSR stood firm and strong, but at a heavy human price. When the Second World War erupted, the Soviet Union faced its greatest challenge. In 1941, Nazi Germany launched Operation Barbarossa, a massive invasion meant to crush the USSR. The initial months were devastating. Cities fell, soldiers retreated, and the very existence of the Soviet Union seemed to hang in the balance. But the spirit of resistance hardened. From the ruins of Leningrad to the factories of the Urals, the Soviet people united with extraordinary resilience. The turning point came at the Battle of Stalingrad, where Soviet soldiers endured hunger, freezing nights, and relentless combat. Their victory there changed the course of the war. By 1945, the Red Army marched into Berlin, helping end the conflict and emerging as a global superpower. The world now looked different, divided between two ideologies. Thus began the Cold War, a long period of competition between the USSR and the United States. The Soviet Union expanded its influence across Eastern Europe, supporting revolutions and shaping governments. At home, new leaders emerged. After Stalin's death, Nikita Khrushchev introduced reforms and declared the need to move away from the harshness of the past. The USSR launched the world's first satellite, Sputnik, beginning the space race and stunning the world. Soviet cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin later became the first human in space, a moment of triumph that showed the world how far the USSR had advanced. Yet the USSR also faced deep internal problems. Economic growth slowed and political reforms were limited. Some leaders tried to introduce changes, others reinforced old controls. The Cold War intensified at moments like the Cuban Missile Crisis, where nuclear tensions nearly reached disaster. Still, throughout these decades, Soviet scientists, artists, athletes, and workers contributed significantly to global culture, sports, and knowledge. By the 1980s, a new leader, Mikhail Gorbachev, sought to modernize the stagnant system through policies of perestroika, restructuring, and glasnost, openness. His efforts aimed to revive the economy and promote transparency, but exposed long-hidden issues within the state. Nations within the Soviet Union began demanding independence, and political pressures mounted. Finally, in 1991, after decades of glory, struggle, triumph, and turmoil, the Soviet Union dissolved peacefully into multiple independent countries. It marked the end of a vast chapter in world history, one filled with extraordinary achievements, painful sacrifices, and powerful lessons. From revolutions to world wars, from space exploration to ideological rivalry, the USSR reshaped the 20th century and left behind a legacy still studied, debated, and remembered across the world.